Matthew chapter 23, verse 2. Yeshua, Jesus says, the teachers of the Torah and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must obey them and do everything they tell you. Curious verse right there. I'm going to explain it. He goes on, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. Unfortunately, this is another poorly interpreted scripture, and actually in the English it's not so poorly interpreted from the Greek. However, it doesn't make sense, and that is because it's an inaccurate interpretation. I'm going to explain. But Yeshua says, the teachers of the Torah and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, referring to the Moses and the Torah, the law, the first 5 books of the Bible. But the curious part is Yeshua, Jesus, saying that you must obey them and do everything they tell you. Now, this can't be an accurate interpretation, first of all, because if you look at Matthew chapter 15, verse 2 and 3, the Pharisees asked Yeshua, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat. And Yeshua replied, and why do you break the command of God? For the sake of your tradition. Now there are, aside from Jews that focus on the Torah and obeying it, there are a lot of Christians who are seeking to obey the Torah themselves, and many of them think that this bit about washing your hands before you eat is part of the Torah, and it isn't. And if you read that carefully, you can see it says, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat. That's not the Torah, it's a tradition. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 18, Jesus Christ, Yeshua, makes it very plain that the Torah is solid, and he supports it. He says, I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the Torah until everything is accomplished. People who think that this bit about washing your hands is part of the Torah, and Jesus and his disciples didn't do that. They say that, he kind of said it's okay, you can skip that part. It's a misunderstanding. It's not in the Torah. That's why he didn't do it. But back to Matthew 23, verse 3. You must obey them and do everything they tell you. Yeshua is talking about the Pharisees. We do have, fortunately, a Hebrew copy, manuscript of the book of Matthew. It was originally written in Hebrew. If you ask me, every book in the New Testament was originally written in Hebrew and then interpreted to Greek. But that's not something I'm interested in debating with anyone. We know that Matthew was written in Hebrew, and we have copies of that, and there's proof that it was the original, not a Hebrew text that was written or translated from Greek. And if you want clearer proof on that, there's a book titled The Hebrew Yeshua versus the Greek Jesus by Nehemiah Gordon. And if you don't know how to spell that or whatever, you want to double check it, look down at the paragraph about this video. You'll see it there, or it might be over on the side if I'm pointing in the right direction, but you'll see it there. And it's a great book. I encourage you to read it, written by a Jewish man. He's a great scholar. But anyway, in the original Hebrew, Matthew 23, verse 3 reads, "So you must obey him and do everything he tells you." And it's referring to verse 2. "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, and so you must obey him, Moses, and do everything he tells you." He's talking about doing what the Torah says, not what the Pharisees say. And you know, the term Pharisees is a biblical title. In today's terms, Pharisee would be Orthodox rabbi. That's the equivalent. And they believe in two Torahs. One is the written Torah, Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible, and the other is the oral Torah. They call it the Takanot or the Ma'asim. And these are the writings of rabbis, a bunch of laws that the rabbis make up themselves that are not in the Bible at all and are not God's Torah. And that's what Yeshua is talking about, when he says they don't do what they do and don't listen to what they say. And he is not saying to obey the Pharisees and do everything the Pharisees tell you. He's saying obey Moses and do everything Moses told us. There's another good scripture in Exodus, chapter 23, verse 2. It says, "Do not follow the crowd in doing wrong." In other words, think for yourself and seek God's truth. If you want to obey the Torah, it's in here. If it's not in here, then you shouldn't be doing it. And it's just a little clarification I wanted to make. It's a short teaching, but I hope it blesses you. In the name above all names, Yahweh, God bless.